Order the City of Breezy Point City Council regular meeting Monday, March 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 PM. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a full house tonight.
You have an extra copy.
All right. Moving on. Item 3 on the agenda, roll call.
Thank you.
Councilmember Scott.
Here.
Councilmember Maroney.
Present.
Present.
Councilmember Jensen.
Present.
Councilmember Ball.
Present.
Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, consent agenda. 4A, minutes, City Council, February 3rd and February 11th, 2025. 4B, claims totaling $681,068.90, including e-checks 3807E to 3837E and checks 140028 to 140089. 4C, resolution electronic funds transfer. 4D, a resolution to approve community garden donation. 4E, a resolution to amend 2025 fee schedule. 4F, part-time police officer Luke Hamilton resignation. 4G, police department purchase ballistic helmets. And 4H, 2025 tort liability waiver. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ball. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Maroney. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, open forum. Is there anybody at this time that wishes to address the City Council in open forum? I'll ask one more time. Is there anybody here that wants to address the City Council in open forum? Hearing none, open forum is closed. Moving on to item 6 in the agenda, Pequot Lake School District Superintendent Kurt Stump, referendum April 8th, 2025. Independent School District 1A, come on up, Superintendent Stump. And for all the presenters that are presenting, there is a mic there, so we ask that you please use it. It makes it easier for our people that are viewing us from YouTube to hear.
These are in the back if people want extra copies as well. Mayor, Council, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Before we get into the referendum, just a quick introduction. Kurt Stump, Superintendent, Pequot Lakes Public Schools, in my 4th year serving this great school district. And before we even talk about the referendum, this is hot off the printers. It's on our district website. It's our monthly newsletter, Patriot Connections, and it's sort of the reason why we're here to begin with. We can talk referendum all we want, but there's a lot of great things happening with our district. As you can see, Knowledgeable made it to state again. Hockey team makes it to state for the first time since 2021. Robotics team is hopefully going to qualify for Worlds and likely qualify for State High School League tournament and have aspirations to win that. Esports for middle schoolers made it to state. Wrestlers qualify superior ratings for band. Eagle View Spelling Bee winners. And then we have an awesome unified program and just doing some amazing things. So read that as your time allows, but it's sort of the reason why we're here. We do have a referendum in April of 2025. And Mayor, before I jump in, maybe I should just make sure we are on the same page. Like 5-minute presentation and then open up for questions. You need shorter or longer? Because I want to respect you.
5 to 7 will work if that works for you.
Let's do that. 'Cause I know board meetings can sometimes get long. April 8th is the actual election date, although early voting has started. It started February 21st. So included in your materials, I did put an absentee ballot. And they're also on the website, patriot-division.org, and also in the back as well, since early voting has started, and there's the absentee ballot application. If you remember back in November of 2023, the district had 2 questions on the ballot. Both questions failed. First question, or the bond question, I should say, was for $76.5 million, and this time that has been lowered to $55 million. Second question was the capital projects levy, was for $500,000, now for $600,000. So I'll separate both questions briefly. How we got from $76.5 million to $55 million is threefold if you want to talk about big buckets. First one is after we failed the referendum, we did a randomly sampled survey of our district residents. We hired a research firm and we asked our district residents what they thought was important and what they didn't think was a need at this time. So based upon that and some community meetings, the first thing that was removed was an auditorium. So for $15 million was the old plan to build an auditorium. We are just going to remodel our current, people like to call it a theater. If you're into that, there's a difference between theater and auditorium. So remodel our current theater at a much cheaper cost, according to our budget, around $2 million. Second thing is instead of building a baseball softball complex in the heart of the Good Life in Pequot Lakes for about $7 million, we are just going to we're just going to make sure our current facilities have irrigation, reseeded, move some fences around to maximize our current spaces at a much cheaper cost. And the third thing is instead of adding more classrooms at the secondary campus, we are going to utilize our current footprint and just maximize our space and have more classes within our current space. So we get from a total tax impact for the average home before, an average home in our district is about $400,000. Back in November of 2023, if both questions pass, was about $25 a month, and this time it's if both questions pass, it's about $16 a month for the average home. So question one, $55 million bond. Questions are independent of each other, I should mention that. The breakdown for question one is on this handout. And again, I'm not going to go through in detail for, this presentation, but you can see the big buckets are safety, security, maintenance, career technology and trades education, and then instructional spaces. I can answer any questions that you want, but our community wanted more detail after the last referendum failed and said, we just need to know more what's in each bucket or what's in the plan. So this is our attempt. Our website has more information on these different bucket areas. That's question one. And you can see the tax impact is about $13 a month if question one passes. Question two is a capital projects levy. That is for $600,000 for 10 years. A couple facts about Pequot Lakes if you didn't know. We are one of the lowest funded school districts in the state of Minnesota. We actually rank 318th out of 328 school districts for per student funding for the 23-24 school year. And so what that means in actual dollars, we received about $10,900 per student. You have districts in the state that are over $22,000 a student. The average in Minnesota is about $14,500 a student, somewhere in there. And that's where most of the districts, even around us, sit, is about $14,000, a little over. So we're at $10,900 per student, and I would say doing fairly well with what we provide for kids. And even if question two passes, the $600,000 capital projects levy, we would be adding about $350 per student. So we wouldn't even come close to average, and that's not our goal. I think both of us, you as a council, us as a school district, try to be fiscally conservative and make sure that we use our dollars to where they're meant to be used. And so for us, our class sizes are one of the lowest, or at least around, and if not in the state. I've seen some metro class sizes are a lot larger than us as well. So I think we're trying to do what's best for our community, even with the low per pupil revenue that we get. 74% of Minnesota school districts have a operating levy or capital projects levy. Most have an operating levy, but for us, that doesn't make a lot of sense because our largest tax base is our seasonal recreational. So for the same amount of money, we could go for an operating levy, but since an operating levy excludes that category, it's just gonna double or triple what the impact is to our district residents. So spreading out the wealth across all properties within our district seems like the more reasonable ask for the district. So that's why it's a capital projects levy, $600,000 for 10 years to have direct funds for curriculum, instructional materials, and technology. So 2 questions, independent of each other, $55 million bond, $600,000 capital projects levy. Exact tax calculator can be found on the website, patriot-vision.org, which is on a bunch of documents. I think that's like the overview of it. You can ask some questions, but I will encourage you or anybody in the audience, if they want to come into the school, get a tour, sit down, ask some questions, I'm absolutely going to make myself available and have in the past and for the next month or 2.
I have a question. What is the formula, or how do they determine the per pupil funding?
I'll give you.
Give him the short
Yeah,
version.
we'll give you the absolute short version. There's a general allowance per pupil, but turns out the state legislature likes to have their categorical funding for their special interest, or for their what they consider to be special interest. So there's some funding streams that we can't access because of our location, because of our size, because of our demographics, or because it was allowed for some school districts 20 years ago. This school district didn't get into it, so it's no longer available for you. So it's that we just can't access those funds because it's mostly categorical funding.
Other questions from the council? No?
I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Reach out if you have any questions. Thank you for serving our community as well.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. All right, we'll move on to item 7 in the agenda, the Paul Bunyan Scenic Byway, Lynn Sharon Brock.
You did such a good job with that great big name. Yes, Sharon Brock, like the
Sharon
candy.
Brock,
like
very
Brock's
good.
Candy. Yep.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's 13 letters. It's almost a whole alphabet of its own. So,
I can relate, Rogan Camp.
yeah, it's easier to figure that out, though, I guess. So, I dropped off some packets earlier, so hopefully you have those in front of
Yes,
you.
do.
Should be a blue.
Yep,
Yeah, there you go, that's good. So last year, I came and visited with you guys a little bit, and we talked about the videography project that the Scenic Byway was doing. But we didn't have anything ready to let you look at. So it was probably kind of confusing to figure out what I was talking about. But now, hopefully, you've had a chance to view the first one that's done and out. Ideal Township was the first township city along the byway to decide to do that. So they did it. We did all the videotaping in June, and the final product went online in December. Videotaping is done by Casey Moore. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, I think it'd be a great thing to do so you get a picture of what we're talking about when we talk about the videography project for each of the byway jurisdictions. There's also a second one that's in the process right now. City of Jenkins was also done in 2024. That was original videotaping done in December, and the final product should be out in June. It's about 6 months in between getting that done and that. So I'm here again today to tell you about that again and to let you know that for 2025 and each year going forward, Casey, the person who's doing our videography, has said that he could probably handle 2, and that's all, no more. So there's 2 slots open each year for a city or a township to say they want to be the one for the year. If you want to be the one for the year, you should tell me and we get you scheduled. So there's curiosity about that. How does that work? So the second page in your packet tells you a little bit more about it. Just briefly, and I don't want to belabor any points, but we have had a few things that are asked all the time And that's why I put that frequently asked questions section at the bottom. If those aren't your questions, you can ask me right now. I'll try to answer anything you have, but those are the ones that we get asked about the most. I think I did talk about that last year because I had that approximate finished minute price last year. So you might already know that one. The project billing and who sets the videography up, that one comes up a lot. The billing goes directly to the jurisdiction. And how is that handled? We have, just like I said, had 2 jurisdictions that have done this project, one a township and one a city. The township paid theirs out of general funds. The city of Jenkins paid theirs out of traffic fines. You might have a whole bunch of other options, I don't know. But just so that you know that. So I'll just kind of take a breather right at that moment right here, and you can tell me if you have another question beyond those 3 that I can answer right now.
I have one question, and that is, it says 1,200 per finished minute. How long? How long of a video are you talking about, if it's per finished minute? What's the average length?
You will tell me that. The
So that
the
we
township or
determine the
city,
length?
You would tell us that.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Ideals was about 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how long the city of Jenkins is gonna be, but probably about that.
Okay.
Casey suggests that people get tired of watching that if it goes much more than 6.
Yep. Attention spans are
Just so
short.
you know that.
Okay,
But
thank you.
Yeah, he will tell me that, depending on how much of your story you feel like telling.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And you can tell it any way you want. Just a quick aside about those 2 Ideal Townships. If you've seen that, then you know. But if you haven't seen it yet, it's very, almost a memorable feeling, like you're going down memory lane kind of a thing. Kind of a sedate, more tone. City of Jenkins, they had a Babe the Blue Ox costume that they put on their clerk, and she introduced everybody that talked. So they had a much more playful, fanciful tone. It doesn't make any difference. Whatever you want that to be is just perfectly fine. We'll work with it. So if something else pops into your mind before I leave, feel free to ask, or you can email me too, because my information is on there. And then I know you're doing lots of work, which is why we're here and not in your regular room today. But there are informational kiosks in your Breezy area, and there's one right here by City Hall. There's been one panel in that kiosk forevermore. If during your work that you're doing now, it exposes the other side of that, and you would like to put a panel up with your story on it, we've done that with 2 townships, 1 city and 1 township, over the years as panel partners. And you can do that. We'll help you develop that and get it in there, and that's just a $200 a year fee that you pay. That works really well. The one at A-Pine, if you ever look at that one, is the City of Jenkins. They did that one, and it's the timeline of their history. It's a cool panel. And they gave us all the information, and we did all that work. So all you have to do is provide the information, and it's a good way for us to partner too. So there are also other panels near you, but they're not in your city limits. They're Pequot city limits, but Lowell Wildlife Management Area is one, and then the other one is at the fire tower. I brought you a copy of our completed corridor management plan, which was finished in fall of '24. I'll give it to you before I go, and you can have it. There's also a copy of that online, but it might be good to know what's going on with the whole route. And then the support request, which we always ask for whenever we come to see you. We have a lot of ways that you can help us out. Dollars are good. Time is good. And what we're really hoping to do now in this next 25 years, the byway's been around 27 years now, is have representation from all of our 14 jurisdictions at some point on our board. So a shared person, maybe someone who's on your board here, and then on ours. It doesn't have to be. It could be somebody from town who's interested. Is fine too. I think for a while there was a lot of interest when Joanne Weaver was part of your group, because she was a master gardener, and we did a lot of master gardener stuff during that time. So if there's someone in town interested, we're happy with that. The byway, I'll say it again, and I've said this before, but it's like a big umbrella. Anything fits under that umbrella. So whoever wants to be on, whatever interest they have, it works for us. So just to remember that we would love to have dollars donated too, because we need those to function just like anybody. but if you have someone who's willing to spend time with us as a board member, we're thrilled with that too. 4 times a year we meet. Also, if you have the option of providing links on your website, we would like to have that done too, if you can do that. We have a brand new website launching in about a week, and we would like to have that linked to as many places as we can. So those are the main things. If there are other questions about anything, I can answer those today too. Or like I said, you can get in touch with me later if you don't have any others right now. What I'm going to leave you with is the membership document and this.
Any questions from the council members? No, a very informative presentation. Thank you. Excellent, thank you. All right, moving on. Item 8 on the agenda, Breezy Point Alliance, Bill Toff, disc golf course issues and suggested solutions.
Good evening. Thank you for putting me on the agenda. My name is Bill Toft. I'm president of the Breezy Point Alliance. I'm first going to discuss some issues with the disc golf course, mainly the expansion. And I just want to remind everybody it's the only disc golf course in the state that's publicly owned that has this line with residential homes. Last year, there were 20 calls to the police department concerning misbehavior down in the expansion. I filled out the appropriate forms to obtain this information, and I have them right here if anybody wishes to see them. The Alliance also sent in last year over 75 pictures of evidence of alcohol use, smoking, public urination, and I have 20 of those pictures here if anybody else wants to see them. I'm also tonight going to play an audio which is typical of what the residents put up with every weekend.
What I would ask before you play that, is it anything that's graphic in nature?
There's a couple bad words in it, but we have to listen to it every weekend
And that's fine,
ourselves.
as long as it isn't any further.
there any
'Cause
children
I don't
here?
know who's watching this on YouTube either.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about kids, that's all.
Yeah, that's.
So let's go ahead.
That's why I'm here.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Bill.
Mayor. Okay, thank you. There's about a 7-second gap here. This was taken in September of last year. That was taken 50 yards away from where the actual sound was coming. What this tells us, members of the Alliance and the residents that live there, is that signs do not work. Even more disturbing, a disc golfer who we know has used Breezy Point's disc golf, according to UDisc, is bragged on Facebook that he always carries a loaded handgun when he plays disc golf. He wasn't lying. He was arrested after dropping his loaded handgun with one in the chamber at a disc golf course in Waite Park. The Breezy Point Alliance deems this really unacceptable, and I guess we don't really want to hear the lazy argument that it's only one. According to Google, and I verified this with the former head of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Mr. Chief Sandell knows who I'm speaking about, that a person who gets picked up for a DWI has gotten away with it 80 times. And so what this translates to us is that one gun down off our backyard is really not only one gun. I want to also to remember there are 20 to 25 kids who live directly on the disc golf expansion. I'm just going to touch as briefly as I can about some of the promises that were made that have not been kept, that every disc golfer spends $50 every time they play, that there's $1,000 per hole sponsorship per year, as stated in 2021-2022 when this was voted in. That they were going to put sound barriers up, trees planted, the community usage, and a QRF code. I spoke to the general manager of the 2 businesses mentioned. Where part of this, all this $50 is spent, and the response was there is no increase in revenue due to disc golfers coming in. The resort owner spoke to a member of the Alliance, and he told him there was zero economic benefit to the resort. As far as the whole sponsorships go, we talked to the same businesses, and neither of them would even consider $1,000, let alone $100. It's just no economic benefit, they said. No sound barriers, no trees. The QRF code was installed back in 2021, and Mr. Mayor, I give you credit back then. You asked specifically about cost neutrality with this project, and I know you were told by a supporter that this QRF code now is there, and there's going to be checks coming in quarterly by the donations from the disc golfers, and that will be put towards the maintenance of the course. As of right now, there has not been one penny donated to the city off of that QRF code. Moving to the usage, the National Park and Rec Association did a survey that found 96% of city's residents will use a traditional public park, playground equipment, baseball field, etc. This lends itself that it's okay to have a cost negative when most of the community is using it. So the Alliance, we wanted to find out how many Breezy Point residents are actually members of the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club. We started asking the previous administrator, Mr. Maroney, and he didn't give us a number about how many were members when he was the administrator, and he said to ask the present administrator. At the same time, we asked Mr. Chansky, figuring if they're using our disc golf course, there's some liability involved. There must be some sort of list, and he was not helpful. Finally, last year, Mr. Scott asked the administrator today, he asked the administrator today, how many Breezy Point taxpayer residents are members of the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club? And to me, his answer spoke volumes, because he said, and I quote, well, the Breezy Point Resort doesn't get all its customers from the city of Breezy Point. My economic professor at the Carlson School would not think much of that response, and I'm just going to be kind and I'm not going to make a comment about it. What I will say is that, what is the percent? I don't think we have any idea, but I do know this. If it was a large number, we would have been told that number at that point in time. Our solutions. We came up with two solutions. The first we think is too expensive for the Breezy Point taxpayers, but I'm going to go over it real quickly. This is to have 20-plus hours more added of patrols with the side-by-side Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 to 9, and Wednesdays when out-of-town clubs are invited by the Breezy Point Disc Golf Club to use the facility, and whenever they host a tournament or an event. This is obviously not going to work. That's the busiest time for the police force, I'm assuming on the weekends during those hours. And the city last year had 11 patrols down there with the side-by-side, and they had to pay overtime to accomplish that. So we feel this is too expensive. The best solution to the Breezy Point Alliance suggests is to close 9 holes, 7 through 15. This will save the city $25,000. And I'm going to give you a handout. You want the handout now or when I'm finished?
Why don't you give it to us when you're finished,
Okay.
unless it's pertinent to what you're telling us right now?
I'll read a couple of sentences and you can look at
Okay.
it. First of all, the 2025 Park and Rec budget is $110,404. The percentage of total square footage the disc golf course and the rec areas comprises 90%. It's very difficult to present verifiable numbers when the government accounting practices are not used. I requested the impossible from supervisors for numbers and percentages, but because there are so many variables, weather, police calls, etc., they provided broad stroke information. And I just want to say I have the greatest respect for our public works people and our police department. They do a fantastic job. The common sense would dictate that the largest area would command the most expense. We used 2 methods to verify that, and actually I went with the method that was the lowest. Besides that savings, there'll be a saving of several $1,000s. I don't know exactly how many because there'll be less patrols. There'll be instead of having there'll be less complaint calls. Pardon me. who knows it's an unquantifiable amount that costs to have the police come off their patrols and come down to the disc golf course. Although we do suggest that if complaints continue, if we do close these holes next year, that 1 through 6 and 16 through 18 also be closed the following year. Because there'll be less than 11 patrols, we assume the city will save $2,000. There'll be no need to spend $2,360 or $2,626 for a porta potty down on hole 13. There's a smooth transition from hole 6 basket to 16 tee box. The distance is very similar to what they traverse now from baskets to tee box. An added kicker is that 6 of us homeowners, and possibly 7, are willing to buy the land from the city behind our homes to the next property line so that the city can recoup some of the cost it spent taking down all those trees. We feel this compromise is fair. It saves the city a minimum of $25,000. It'll be more this year with other expenditures taken down. If they take us up on the offer from the homeowners, which we obviously we'd have to work out the details, it'll save this thousands more will come into the city. It's a win for the disc golfers. Disc golfers still have 27 holes, and I Googled this last week. I asked how many public courses in the state of Minnesota have more than 27 holes. The answer came back 0. Most have 9 and 18 that it's stated, and that's because they still list, the database lists the Breezy Point Disc Golf Course with just an 18-hole course yet. We prayerfully implore you to close holes 7 through 15 if you represent us, the Breezy Point taxpayers, and I'll answer any questions, but again, thank you so much for uninterrupting this. I know most of you have heard it before, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate the fact that the Alliance brought us some solutions. Because oftentimes what happens is people like to bring problems, but they don't like to bring solutions. So at least you've given us something that we can at least look at and consider. Ultimately, the council will have to take things under consideration to see, what is the best scenario moving forward. I will restate what I stated when I was mayor the first time. I agree. That disc golf course I always felt should be fiscally neutral to the city. Are there opportunities for us to make changes? I can't say anything right now. We're going to have to look at it. But I do appreciate you taking the time, coming to present to us, giving us the information, and giving us some solutions that we can at least look at and consider.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the council before I move on?
Yeah, I guess
Go ahead.
to your comments,
Member Jensen.
Mayor Rogenkamp, what are you proposing then, that this gets put on the agenda for future discussion by the council, or,
Yeah, I think ultimately that's probably what's going to need to happen is we're going to have to put it on the agenda for a future discussion and get some information from the city side, probably from our departments, also from parks, and be able to get some more information and then have a discussion about what do we want to do. I do think we have some things that we need to think about. I'm still somebody who has always said that we need to get some kind of something back out of it. I don't know what that is. I talked about a QR code and a fee that people get charged if they're going to use the course. There's other ways to do it, but none of that has come to fruition yet. And there's a lot of the things that are going on in the city right now. So I understand that this, unfortunately, may not be at the top of our priority list, but I think we ultimately have to take a look at it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, Councilmember Jensen.
I guess as long as there's the commitment to get it in the next few months.
Yep.
Because to piggyback on what Bill said, I visited numerous homes on those holes.
Yep.
That's noisy. And, when it was put in, the city knew that it was close to the properties. Some of it's 50 feet. It's noisy. You can hear the swearing, and like I say, this isn't just one property, it's multiple properties. Councilmember Maroney, to his credit, was willing to try and do some things to alleviate the noise. We had attempted to come to an agreement to a solution, but we were unable to, between him and I, reach it. but I do think it's something that needs attention. I think the Professional Disc Golf Association tournaments were given high priority and kind of had the run of the courses. These were built for the public and residents. We all know there's a history, there's very contentious, heated council meetings. In my opinion, it's, for the city itself, it's evenly split. I mean, it's divided. And the majority of the support comes from outside the community.
Correct.
So as long as it'll be on a future agenda, but this needs to be addressed.
Well, here's what I would say. I would like to see us first get a city administrator hired, because I think they need to be involved in this process as we move forward.
I would agree.
And so
I mean,
we
that's
know
our
that that's
focus.
in the works right now. And I just stated it publicly again, and I think people who know me from when I served as mayor before knew where I stood on that disc golf course. At the same time, we've got it now. So we need to do our best to make sure we're taking care of it and doing what we need to address concerns. So I'm right there with you. So we'll be working on getting something. I think we need to consider some of this stuff that was presented. I'm glad it was. Thank you again for that. And then we can look at what are those options out there. So that's where I'm at with it right now.
Well, I just got to say I agree with everything that Steve said, and I'm not so sure that I necessarily see things the same way with waiting to do anything until we have an administrator. I think time has certainly brought about and otherwise proven that it's up to the city council to provide the public services and goods that residents and others enjoy. It's up to us to make sure that when we're faced with issues, which clearly there are plenty and have been over the course of this disc golf course expansion operation, we have an obligation to do something and to act. And I'm not sure that I am comfortable effectively kicking the can and saying, let's revisit this, let's make sure that, admittedly, staff is important to be a part of whatever direction the council sets, but it's the council. And it's our decision ultimately that's going to make the difference here. And I'm not so sure that I don't want to offer up a motion at this point. If that is, I guess, not completely out of bounds at this point. We've had the Alliance come forward. This has been a perennial issue. I don't think there's any one of us as elected officials that can realistically say we would tolerate this conduct and activity if it was in our backyards. Because you know what? It's not in any of our backyards. But I can sure as in hell tell you I would not tolerate it if this was in my backyard. I brought up concerns before. I made a request in front of the council to ask the city attorney for his opinion on what happens if we as a council do not in fact enforce the policy and ordinances that we have, because clearly they're not being enforced. And we need to figure out either a solution in terms of how this conduct no longer continues, or we need to start shutting down holes. And as people probably know, I have not been a proponent, a fan, or supporter of this whatsoever from day one. And we haven't even begun to get into the conversation as to why the council's decision to develop this outlot is in fact illegal. I mean, that's probably a whole nother conversation, but at this point, I want to offer up a motion.
Okay, before you do, may I speak? I think I have the right to.
Didn't say you didn't.
So with that being said, I thank you for your comments, and I appreciate that, and you're right. My point about getting the new city administrator wasn't an attempt to kick it down the road. I just think that I want to make sure that if we're going to make a decision, we're making the best decision for all people considered. I think that's the way it needs to be done. I'm not opposed to you bringing out a motion if you want to sue. You have a right to do that as a council member. As far as the whole process of how it went on and what took place is water over the dam. we can look at it if you want to moving forward, but I don't know if we're going to gain anything at this point with that. So with that being said, if you have a motion that you'd like to make, go ahead and make it.
And I couldn't disagree more with the fact that this is water under the bridge. This is exactly an ongoing demonstration of government decisions that are imposing the will of the government and exercising government overreach in areas that simply should not be taking place.
No,
There is no legal authority, there is no city ordinance, because I've asked several times as to effectively give the council the permission to convert an outlot in a legally recorded subdivision into parkland. Here's the legal document, the recording of this plat, and nowhere in here, under the covenants, restrictions, easements, or otherwise, does it give the city of Breezy Point any ownership of that property and any implicit right to go in there and develop it.
okay.
None. So short of that being the case and included in here, this was an inappropriate action on the part of the council, and I would go so far as to say it's illegal. So I certainly don't agree that this is water under the bridge and that ship has sailed. Not at all.
Okay. Well, you have the right to, Councilmember Scott, you have every right to speak your piece. That's why you serve on the council. That's why you're elected by the public. You have the ability to speak what you want. We all do. And so I don't hold that against you at all. I can say that we'll do our best to move forward. Whatever that looks like, I'm not sure at this point. At that point, though, what I'd like to say is let's keep on track with what you're talking about, and if you want to make a motion, do so.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the recommended solution of the Breezy Point Alliance to effective immediately close holes, I believe it was 7 through 15.
That was the correct holes that were stated. So you're making a motion that the council take action right now to immediately close holes 7 through 15 of the disc golf course.
The-
Am I hearing you correctly? Just want to make sure that your motion's correct.
Correct, yes. I
Okay.
would further clarify, I'm talking about and referring to the disc golf course expansion area, not the original.
Perfect. Thank you for doing so. So I have a motion from Councilmember Scott to take action on the disc golf course expansion to immediately close holes 7 through 15 on that existing course. Do I have a second to this motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a second from Councilmember Jensen on this motion. Discussion. Any discussion?
I've got none on the motion.
Okay.
Well, I would say the discussion would be, there's some facts finding that I'd like to have staff review on what was presented to us to further proof that fact. That's where I'm at right now, but.
Okay. Any other discussion at this point?
I would just say that I'm of the opinion that we don't act on this today and that we wait for discussion with all staff members, including the new administrator, when they are hired.
Okay. Any other discussion?
We know one thing for sure. I think that's made abundantly clear at this point already. More of the same conduct, inappropriate activity, and downright rude behavior is going to continue. As the weather warms and people are out and they get out on the disc golf course, we're going to be faced with the same issues. This is what now going to be the second or third year that the disc golf has been in operation. I don't know how much more information from the public or notice we need otherwise before we say we have more than just a few bona fide documented issues in front of us to address. What are we going to do to manage those issues? And that is every bit of the difficulty I'm having with this, will continue to have with it, is simply of use of an outlot in a subdivision that was essentially taken from the enjoyment of the residents and those that have purchased property and are building homes and making the investment. I view it as every way inappropriate, and again, if not downright illegal. I don't know how any one of us, as elected council members, serving at the pleasure of our residents and taxpayers, can sit here and say that was zero research and effort having been put into this on the front end. Mind you, no plan, no community engagement, not even notification of the residents whose property abutted this area was undertaken whatsoever, that we feel that this is serving the taxpayers and the community as a large best interest. That's really the difficulty that I'm having.
Duly noted. Duly noted. Other discussion? Comments? All right, hearing none, I'll bring this motion to a vote. The motion, once again, is to immediately close holes 7 through 15 on the disc golf course expansion. The motion was made by Councilmember Scott, seconded by Councilmember Jensen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we get a roll call? Quite.
Sure. Those in favor signify by raising hand.
Aye.
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 Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion fails. We will continue to take a look at this. This is not going away. I understand that. I know it needs to be dealt with. I realize that.
In 3 years.
So we're working on it, and I will not give up on it. So again, I thank you for bringing what you brought to the table. I appreciate the solutions. I think there's some merit to that, and maybe we can do something with it. So, all right. Moving on, item number 9 on the agenda, rezoning request from urban residential to wooded residential, Sarah Lovejoy, 7036 Nickel Road, a rezoning request, urban reserve to woodland reserve. Come on up, Sarah. State your name and your address, please, for us.
My name is Sarah Lovejoy, and I live at 7036 Nickel Road.
Great, thank you.
So,
What would you like to address the council with on this tonight?
well, I met with zoning last month and did a request I have a 10-acre lot that I would like to ultimately divide into 2 5-acre lots so that I could sell my home to my daughter and build a home on the other.
And I believe if I'm correct, planning and zoning did take action on this. Am I correct, Administrator
Planning
Bonsack?
and zoning recommended that the council approve the rezoning request from urban reserve to wooded residential.
Okay. And do you have anything to add to that, or?
Please?
Okay. What would be some, I mean, it sounds like you want to split this because you're looking at trying to sell part of it to your
Yeah, I
daughter,
want
is that
to.
correct?
Yeah, I want to sell because I live on. Well, you can see where my home is right now, and if we divide it, we could build a home regardless within the city, like laws or however that works. But that gets tricky. So we'd like us to each have our own ownership of the land so that they can develop equity, and so can we.
All right.
So.
Are there any questions from the council?
Not questions. I reviewed the minutes from the planning and zoning. I mean, there was no objections. To me, it makes perfect sense. I mean, it's still 5-acre lots.
Yeah.
And the neighbors that testified or went before planning and zoning on her behalf said, you know, that's fine because they're still 5-acre lots.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, that was the only thing that I know, the planning commission asked for it to be surveyed and validate that each parcel is still 5 acres, and that was, the requirement for a wooded residential.
I do know the rest of it are on the urban reserve right now, so it is kind of a spot zone in there within that piece. But with that being said, who knows, maybe there's some future potential that we are gonna eventually do a rewrite. So that might be something to be looked at that time too for that area. Okay, well, if you don't have anything more for us, thank you for coming towards, and you may go ahead and sit down now. We'll consider
Okay, thank
the
you.
recommendation. You're welcome.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission to rezone property at 7036 Nickel Road from urban reserve to wooded residential.
I have a motion from Councilmember Stott to rezone.
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilmember Maroney. So again, this is to rezone this parcel from urban to reserve to woodland reserve. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. You're welcome. Item 10, city administrator candidates. So, do you have anything, or do you just want me to go ahead and handle it? Okay, I got it. All right, so we went through the process of reviewing application for a city administrator. There were some selections made to be contacted to see if they were interested in interviewing with us. We had a top 3 candidates with 2 alternates. Since the time of the selection, 2 of the top 3 candidates have withdrawn their application. So we do have one of the top 3 still there, plus the 2 alternates both stated that they would interview with us. We do have the date set for March 19th right now to do the interviews, and I believe everybody got an information packet of the timing of when those interviews are going to take place. Yep, that's yours. And how that's going to work with that process. So we'll be doing that. But I am going to announce the 3 candidates that we are going to be interviewing tonight. So the first candidate that we'll interview or is on the list is Richard Baker. He's an economic development director from the city of Thief River Falls. The second is Jennifer or Jenny Max, who is the city administrator for the city of Nisswa. And the third is Fred Ventresco, who is a seasoned public administrator, and he's currently in transition between employment or jobs. So those will be the 3 candidates. Again, as I stated, March 19th, we'll be doing the interviews. Staff will be there as well. So staff will have an opportunity to sit with them as well as in the council. We'll go through the interview processes. We will have our firm MGT who will be there, and they will also be helping us as they will be doing the interview questions for us. So, are there any, yes?
Just a point of information that those interviews to be conducted on the 19th are open to the public.
Yes.
They will be broadcast or on the following day and recorded. I did also pass out a packet of proposed questions that you folks can peruse and go through. And if you find some that you think that want to be put on the list to be asked, I would like you to get those questions to me.
Perfect. Okay, thank
So
you.
we can put together a final list.
Yep. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So can I ask, of the 3 that are being interviewed, which was the remaining candidate out of the initial 3 that were identified? If I'm understanding right,
Oh,
2
yes.
out of the
Jenny
3?
Max.
Jenny Max.
Okay.
Yep, Jenny Max, Councilmember Scott. Good question, thank you. I did not clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yep.
And just in a matter of full transparency for the rest of the council and others, in communications with staff and the mayor, I unfortunately am not going to be able to attend the interviews on the 19th. It would have worked had they been able to be scheduled later in the day. Got to say, I'm a little disappointed that with 2 out of the 3 having withdrawn, that wasn't maybe looked at as an opportunity to consider maybe a different day or different timing on that day. Very much would have liked to have been involved in this process, but understand the council need to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Scott. And I know I had mentioned too that there's an opportunity potentially to have you, if at all possible, come in by Teams and virtual. So we will provide that to you in case there's the opportunity for you to sit in Any other comments? Okay, moving on. Number 11, mayor and city council reports. Do we have any reports from committees from the city council? Councilmember Jensen, do I believe the road committee met, correct?
I was still
That's right.
out of state. Councilmember Maroney went.
I was able to attend my first road committee meeting. Mr. Zierden led a great meeting with the committee that we had there. Some options that we were talking about were some road improvements for this year, knowing what the budget is that we have to work from. I believe it was kind of a consensus to travel those roads to kind of rate them from the committee's perspective. It's one thing from Joe, and the committee wanted to put their opinion and look at them. A great committee, great valuable backgrounds from all of them. The other thing that was discussed that you can see in the minutes that it's kind of a topic of discussion that we as a council must be addressing sometime soon here, whether it's to act on before these roads or after these roads, but is the assessment policy on repaving roads. So that is something that's going to have to be added to our agenda for discussion sakes and figure out how we're going to address that going forward.
I saw that.
Mr. Dearden, anything else I could? Okay.
No, I kind of summarized in the departmental information, just a brief memo of the list of potential roads and overview. So.
All right. Thank you for the report and the update on that. And yes, I saw that in there, and I know that we're going to have to address it. So we'll be looking at putting it on the agenda and gathering information for the council to start considering options of how we want to move forward with that. So that's going to be, I think, something that's going to take some thought and some thinking behind what we're going to do moving forward, because that's going to determine how we do these roads as we work forward with the CIP and everything else. So I've got some thought. Excuse me. I've got some thoughts around that, but I'll hold those until we get to the point where we're going to have our discussion. So, are there any other reports from council? I have only one thing, and I'll mention. I know that the finance committee, we're going to be working on trying to get together here in March, and doing a meeting. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. Councilmember Scott provided me some dates of availability, so we'll be working on getting together with the staff and sitting down and looking at our finances and thinking about some things like Bushman Road projects and how we're thinking about that as we move forward, and some of the other dynamics around some of the other things we know we have coming. So, and that's really all I have at this point to report.
I don't have any reports. I was, out of town, but I just wanted to cover it's Minnesota Food Share Month.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
The city of Breezy Point is supporting Lakes Area Food Shelf once again. So the city hall will be a drop-off point. In addition, I did contact a couple businesses. The Commander, owned by Neil Narveson, and then David Spizo from Breezy Point Resort and the North Star. Both have agreed to be drop-off points, and they're also, doing various promotions. If people bring in food, this is what we'll do. And I think it's good to raise awareness that there is a great need out there. And I don't think people quite realize just how much need that there is.
Yeah.
So March will be the month for City Hall. The only other thing I have is just to echo the assessments needs to be addressed quick, because we're to the point that these roads, the streets committee's done their job.
Yep.
They've told us these are the streets that need
it's
to
time
be
for us to take action.
addressed. One of them on there is last done in 1978. That's 47 years. So council owns this. I know we're all in agreement, but it is, it needs to be done. And, there's pros and cons and different ways to look about it. But I'm excited to hear that the finance committee is going to meet, because part of it is how do you finance it in a fiscally responsible, manner, so we're not, the levy doesn't skyrocket. I mean, we're all,
Right.
aware of that.
Yeah, so
not
it
an
kind of
easy
goes hand
task.
in hand a little bit. Yeah, I agree. And no, I realized the assessment piece was, I knew it was coming, and we're at that point. So we've got to get it put together and do something with it. So that'll be one of the things that gets slid up the priority list for sure. But I thank you for your comments, Councilmember Johnson.
Steve, what was the last year that you said that any road improvements were undertaken?
Well, of the list that Joe provided, it's Piney Way was one of them. There's a lot of them, but the Streets Committee identified roads within the community that were rated 4 and 5, meaning they need to get done.
So the
Nick
last
Peterson,
time those roads were, any of those roads were touched was 47 years ago, you said?
just the one, that's
the
just
one.
Piney Way. There's different dates associated with them, but, council, we have our work cut out and we need to, start repairing some of these.
Wasn't that all that was provided to us in that plan, right?
Yeah, it was in the plan.
Yeah, that's what I
Correct.
thought. Okay. Yeah, because I remember going through that. So, okay. But yes, we will. It's on the list. So I appreciate the update on that too, though. All right. Hearing none other, I'm going to move on to number 12, staff reports, 12A, City Hall high-tech payment application number 5. Administrator Bonsack.
That, again, is a pay request for the work that's been done on the City Hall to this point. I believe that number is $231,812.16. And a motion would be appropriate to approve that pay request.
Do I have a motion to approve the high-tech pay application number 5 as stated?
So move.
Councilmember Roney makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Ball makes a second. Are there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? The motion carries. All right, number 13, we are going to suspend the regular session and move into number 14, which is to move to closed session to discuss acquisition and temporary easements for the Bushman Road reconstruction project on the following parcels as listed. So I will now recess the meeting and go into executive session.